Her baby vanishes without a trace, and the only suspect is the one who was meant to protect her. Who is the kidnapper, you will shock. I promise to you. If you feel brave enough to uncover secrets that chill to the bone, hit that subscribe button for more gripping thrillers. It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon in the Dawson household. The estate sat on the edge of Wexley Hills, a picturesque, gated community surrounded by dense woods and long, winding roads. The kind of place where people locked their doors out of habit, not fear. Inside, soft rain tapped against the windows as Margaret Dawson sat on the living room couch with a half-empty cup of tea. She was 40 years old, composed and elegant, every strand of her brown hair pinned in place. Her gaze was fixed on the hallway, where baby Ella's laughter had echoed just minutes earlier. Now, there was only silence. "Ella," Margaret called, out, rising slowly. No response. She checked the nursery first. The crib was empty. The stuffed giraffe lay face down on the rug. The mobile above the crib spun lazily from the breeze of an open window. That window hadn't been opened 10 minutes ago. Margaret's stomach dropped. She rushed through every room, barefoot and shaking, her voice rising each time she called out. "Ella? Sweetheart, where are you?" Nothing. Then came the scream, a raw, terrified cry that shattered the peace of Wexley Hills. 4 hours later, Dawson Estate. Detective Julian Hart arrived just before dusk. At 37, he had the weary eyes of a man who had seen too much and trusted too few. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that seemed to cut through lies before words were even spoken. He moved with purpose, his black coat still wet from the rain. Trailing behind him was Clara Monroe, 29, fiercely intelligent, flirtatious, and equally competent. Her high heels clicked across the marble floor like a metronome of intent. "You know," she said casually, brushing her blonde hair behind one ear, "most people call the cops before hiring a private detective." Julian didn't answer. His eyes were already scanning the room. Margaret stood by the fireplace, arms folded tight against her chest. "She was here," she whispered. "Ella was here. I went to get her juice, and when I came back, she was gone." "Any signs of a break-in?" Julian asked. "The window in the nursery, it was open." Julian stepped closer. "Do you usually open windows on rainy afternoons?" Margaret looked away. Clara walked through the hallway, taking photos. "No signs of forced entry," she murmured. "Locks are untouched." "Tell me everything that happened today," Julian said. "Start from the beginning." Earlier that day, 10 May, Margaret's day had been painfully routine. Ella had eaten breakfast, oatmeal with banana slices, watched a cartoon and played with her blocks. Margaret had taken a phone call around 12:45 p.m., stepped away for less than 5 minutes, and when she returned, she broke down again, barely holding herself together. Julian didn't press. Instead, he looked at the photo frames lining the mantel. One in particular caught his eye, Ella in a woman's lap. But it wasn't Margaret. Clara noticed it too. "Who's this?" Margaret hesitated. "That's my sister, Delilah." Julian turned. "The child's aunt?" "Technically, her step-aunt. She was very close to my late husband, but Delilah and we don't speak much." Julian frowned. "She spend time with Ella?" "Sometimes. She loves her." Margaret's voice trembled. "She would never—" "Where is she now?" Julian asked. "I think she's out of town. I'll need her address." Later that evening, Dawson Nursery Julian stood alone in the nursery, letting the silence speak. He crouched next to the crib, inspecting the windowsill. No scratches, no smudges, just raindrops on the sill. Something felt off. Too clean. He opened the toy chest. Inside were plush toys, rattles, and at the very bottom, a black flash drive. He held it up. "Clara, Clara walked in, eyebrows raised. Please tell me that's not where she stores her baby photos. Julian plugged the drive into his encrypted tablet. It opened instantly. One folder, labeled Sarov Files. Clara leaned over his shoulder. Sarov? As in Nikolai Sarov, the rogue diplomat. Julian's expression darkened. He wasn't just a diplomat. He was one of the most dangerous intelligence brokers in Eastern Europe before he vanished 5 years ago. Clara blinked. Why does Margaret have a folder with his name in her? Nursery? Julian's voice dropped. Because Margaret Dawson used to be Margaret Sarov, his wife. The spy element unfolds back in the living room. Julian confronted Margaret again. This time he wasn't gentle. Your maiden name is Dawson, but you were married under the name Margaret Sarov. You and Nikolai had a daughter before you disappeared. From public record. Margaret's lips parted, but no words came. You changed your name, erased your past. Why? Margaret finally sank into the couch. Because Nikolai disappeared with state secrets and enemies. I left to protect Ella. I wanted her to have a normal life. I didn't think they would find us here. Clara crossed her arms. Who's they? Margaret's answer was barely a whisper. His enemies. Or his allies. I don't know anymore. Julian's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She is safe. For now, do not involve police. You have 72 hours. Attached was a photo, Ella wrapped in a blanket, eyes open, alive. Julian stared at the screen. This wasn't random, he said. They knew exactly who she was. Meanwhile, a shadow in the rain across town, inside a dim motel room, Delilah Grace rocked Ella gently in her arms. Her face was soft, loving, tender. She kissed the girl's forehead, humming an old lullaby. I told them I wouldn't hurt you, she whispered, but they never listen. On the table beside her lay a phone with a single incoming message. We're watching. Deliver her by Friday, or you disappear too. Delilah's smile faltered. She looked out the window. The rain hadn't stopped, and the storm was just beginning. Rain fell harder the next morning. The Dawson estate sat under a gray sky, quiet and heavy with tension. Detective Julian Hart hadn't slept. He sat in his car parked across from the house, staring at the flash drive in his hand. Beside him, Clara sipped cold coffee. So the baby's aunt is hiding her in a motel, and Margaret used to be married to a missing spy. You still think this case is about a babysitter? Julian's jaw tightened. We don't know what Delilah wants yet. She didn't hurt the baby, but she's scared of someone. That message wasn't from her. Clara leaned back. She's being used. Maybe, Julian said. But if she's part of something bigger, we don't have much time to find out. He opened his laptop. Again. The folder on the flash drive contained more than he thought. Encrypted files, a few photos of Nikolai Sarov, Margaret's ex-husband, and something else. A scanned page of an old government file. Subject, Sarov, Nikolai. Last seen, Munich. 2018, status missing. Believed dead or in hiding. Threat level high, one line had been highlighted. Asset recovered, codenamed Angel, protected by civilian handler. Julian stared at that name. Angel, he said aloud. It's a code name. Clara looked over. You think that's the baby? Julian didn't answer, but the possibility chilled him. Was Ella not just a child, but a target? Across town. Green Pines Motel. Delilah sat by the window, rocking Ella gently in her arms. She looked tired. Her long dark hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She held the baby like she was the only thing keeping her alive. On the small motel table was a burner phone. It buzzed again. Unknown number. Location pinged. You are not alone. Stick to the plan. Delilah stood quickly and pulled the curtain shut. "No," she whispered. "Not yet. She's just a baby. She doesn't belong in this world." She looked down at Ella, who had fallen asleep against her chest. Delilah pulled out an old photo from her bag. It was of her, Margaret, and Nikolai, smiling from years ago, back when she was just the aunt, just the babysitter. But things had changed. She wasn't babysitting anymore. She was protecting. Back at Dawson Estate, Julian walked the halls of the house again. Something still felt wrong. He passed the nursery, paused, and looked back at the crib. The mobile above it was spinning, again. The window was closed. He walked in slowly. Clara followed. Julian opened the toy chest again. Nothing. Then he noticed something strange. The teddy bear on the shelf had a slit in the back. He picked it up. Inside was a small hidden mic. Clara's eyes widened. They bugged the nursery. Julian turned the bear in his hand. Someone was listening. Maybe still is. He pulled out the battery and tossed it on the floor. Who were they watching? Clara whispered. The baby or Margaret? Julian didn't answer. He had a theory, but he didn't want to say it out loud. That afternoon, at police archives, Julian and Clara drove downtown. He used a few old contacts to access sealed intelligence files. Inside, they found what they were looking for, Nikolai Sarov's profile. One section stood out. Sarov extracted vital data from Project Eve before defecting, believed to have passed information to an unidentified civilian female. That woman disappeared shortly after. Daughter believed to be born in hiding, Clara whispered. The baby is the asset. Julian nodded. Not because she holds information, because she's a symbol, a message, proof that Sarov succeeded. But he's gone. Julian looked at her. And someone wants to erase everything he left behind. Back at the motel, someone watching. Delilah didn't see the black car parked across the street. Inside sat a man in a dark coat, watching her window through binoculars. He spoke into a mic. Target has the child, no law enforcement present, extraction window 48 hours. Another voice responded through the earpiece. Wait for signal, do not engage until order is confirmed. The man lit a cigarette. He wasn't police. He wasn't even local. Later, Clara's apartment, Julian sat at Clara's kitchen table going over files. Clara poured herself a glass of wine. You know, she said softly, you could stay here tonight. It's safer than the motel. Julian didn't look up. I'm not the one in danger. Clara leaned on the counter. I'm serious. You can't keep running yourself into the ground. I've handled worse. She smiled. I know. That's what makes you attractive. Julian finally looked at her. Clara, I know, she cut in. You don't date co-workers. You don't mix feelings with work. You've told me before. Julian looked away. I can't afford distractions. Not in this case. Clara's smile faded. Fine. Then let's focus. Clue discovered. Margaret's secret room back at the Dawson estate. Margaret was alone in her study. She opened a drawer and pulled out an old key. She hadn't used it in years. She went down to the basement. Behind a shelf, hidden in a wall, panel was a locked door. She opened it. Inside, dusty files, a satellite phone, an old photo of Nikolai holding Ella as a newborn, and a map. On the map, red circles marked across different countries, and one bold circle right in Wexley Hills. She stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up the satellite phone and dialed. It's me, she whispered. They found us. Pause, then a cold male voice responded, then finish what we started. Margaret's hands trembled. Back in the car, Julian's realization. Julian connected the dots. If the baby was the asset, and Delilah was the protector, then someone else must have orchestrated the leak. He called Clara. Margaret isn't just the mother, She was the handler in Project Eve. She knew what Nikolai was doing. She helped him. And now she's lying to us. Clara's voice was sharp. So Delilah may have kidnapped the baby? To save her from Margaret? Julian nodded slowly. Yes. And the real threat is still inside that house. Meanwhile, at the motel, Delilah looked at the baby. She smiled sadly. I wish I could keep you forever, but they'll come for you soon. She packed a small bag. Then she kissed Ella on the forehead. I'm sorry, baby girl. I have to go finish this. Final scene, outside Dawson Estate. Julian returned to the house just as the sun began to set. He found the basement door open. He stepped inside slowly. The hidden room was empty, but written on the wall in red marker was a message. She knows everything. Stop her before it's too late. Clara called seconds later. Julian, the motel room's empty. Delilah's gone. And the baby, she's not with her. Julian froze. The storm had moved inside the house, and the real conspiracy was just beginning. The rain came back hard that night. Julian Hart stood in the Dawson Estate basement, staring at the red writing on the wall. She knows everything. Stop her before it's too late. His phone buzzed again. Clara's voice sounded shaky. Julian, Delilah's gone, no sign of a struggle, and the baby's crib is empty. I think someone took Ella again. Julian felt cold move through his chest. Delilah didn't run, he said. She went underground. She's trying to finish something. And the baby, he looked at the wall again. I think Margaret has her. Meanwhile, in a remote house outside town, a single lamp lit the small room. Margaret Dawson sat calmly in a rocking chair. Ella lay wrapped in a blanket, sleeping soundly in a crib beside her. Margaret stared at the baby, her eyes strange. Not unkind, but cold, focused. You have your father's eyes, she whispered. She picked up a small chip from the table. A micro drive. The world killed him for what he knew. They won't take you too. She stood, walked over to an old chest, and pulled out a case. Inside was a hidden passport, foreign currency, and a silenced pistol. Margaret whispered to herself, I promised Nikolai I'd protect her, and I will. Back at Clara's apartment, Clara sat with her laptop open, digging through government records and spy agency files using Julian's access codes. She found it. Project Eve. Most files were classified. But she hit on something strange. A list of operatives, real names redacted, except one agent alias, Angel Handler, embedded civilian. Location, U.S. status, active sleeper. Clara whispered, Margaret. But something else caught her attention. Symbol at the bottom of the page, a triangle with an eye surrounded by Cyrillic writing. She typed it into a translator. Operation Clean Slate. Before she could search more, someone knocked on her door. Clara stood carefully. She wasn't expecting anyone. Another knock. She grabbed her phone and opened the door slightly. It was Delilah, wet, pale, shaking. Clara, I need help. 20 minutes later, safe inside. Clara wrapped Delilah in a blanket and gave her tea. Delilah's lips trembled. I didn't run, she said. I went to get something from the old safe house. Nikolai left it for me in case things went bad. What did you find? A location, Delilah said. Where Margaret took the baby. It's not just a house. It's a handoff point. Clara's eyes widened. She's going to give Ella away, Delilah nodded. To them. The same people who tried to erase Nikolai. This is bigger than just a family fight. They're tying up loose ends. Julian on the move. Julian raced down dark streets in his car. Rain, hammering his windshield. Clara's call played on repeat in his mind. Delilah's with me. Margaret's not alone. Someone's funding her. She's part of a cleanup op. Julian swore under his breath. He turned off the main road and sped toward the location Delilah had described. A remote cabin in the forest, used long ago by off-the-books agents during Black Ops training. He remembered the place. So did his father. Julian wasn't just a detective, he used to be a spy too. Inside the cabin, Margaret wasn't alone. A tall man in a grey coat stood near the window. Russian accent. Cold stare. "You said the child would be ready by tonight," he said. Margaret nodded. "She's safe, sleeping. No one followed me." The man didn't smile. "You've delayed enough, Margaret. The mother's dead, the father's gone. There is no one left to claim her but us." Margaret lowered her eyes. "I promised Nikolai I'd keep her away from people like you." He stepped forward, slow and threatening. And yet, here we are. Behind them, the baby stirred. Outside the cabin. Julian arrived as Julian parked far from the cabin and moved through the forest silently, his old spy instincts returning. Through his binoculars, he spotted the man inside. Definitely not local. Clara's voice crackled in his earpiece. "His name is Viktor Krolov, former Russian intelligence, now a fixer for an underground network tied to Eve. Julian, he doesn't leave witnesses." Julian responded quietly. "Then we end this now." Tension inside builds. Margaret picked up Ella and held her tightly. "I'll take her myself," she said. "I'll disappear again. You'll never hear from us." Krolov took out his gun. Calm. "That's not how this works." Just then, crack. A window shattered. A smoke grenade rolled across the floor. Krolov raised his weapon, but Julian burst in through the back door. Fast. Trained. Gun pointed. "Drop it," Julian barked. Krolov turned. "Ah, the detective. Or should. I say, Agent Hart." Margaret looked stunned. "You were an agent?" Julian kept his eyes on Krolov. "I was. Until I found out what Eve was really doing." Krolov grinned. "Then you know the girl is more than a baby. She's a child," Julian snapped. "That's all that matters." Suddenly, Margaret raised her gun, pointed it at Krolov. "Leave us alone," she said. Krolov hesitated, then laughed. "You still believe you have a choice?" Bang! She shot him in the shoulder. Julian tackled him before he could fire back. A brief fight. Then Krolov lay unconscious. Julian stood up, breathing hard. Margaret cradled Ella. "I did what I had to do." Julian nodded slowly. "It's over." But it wasn't. Final scene, a twist. 2 days later, the baby was safe, sleeping peacefully at Clara's place while authorities investigated everything. Delilah disappeared again. Margaret was under surveillance, claiming it was all protection, not betrayal. But that night, as Julian sat at his desk reading through Eve files, something made him stop. A photo. Hidden deep in the drive. It showed a lab, a baby, monitors, doctors, and in the corner, Margaret, not 10 years ago. 2. Clara walked in and saw his face. "What is it?" Julian turned the screen. "That's not Ella." Clara's voice dropped. "Then who is?" Julian whispered. "She's the real angel, and we've had the wrong baby all along." Julian couldn't sleep. He sat in his dark apartment staring at the screen. The lab photo haunted him. Margaret, 2 years ago, holding a baby that wasn't Ella. Monitors in the background, scientists in masks. Project Eve wasn't just an old spy program. It was still active, still using children. The file's timestamp was clear. Subject, E77. Identity implant complete. Genetic match, 64%. Cognitive overwrite in progress. Julian whispered. They weren't protecting Ella, they were replacing someone. He dialed Clara. "We need to meet. Now." At Clara's apartment, 1:15 a.m. Clara poured coffee, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "So, you're saying Ella isn't really Ella?" Julian nodded slowly. "I don't think the child in our care is the Dawsons' biological granddaughter. I think she's part of something bigger." Clara looked at the photo again. "This lab, where is it?" "I ran image searches," Julian said. "One possible match, an old black site in the Colorado mountains, decommissioned, supposedly." Clara whispered, "And what's this cognitive overwrite?" Julian met her eyes. "They're planting false memories, identities, starting from birth." Meanwhile, Margaret Dawson. Under watch, Margaret sat quietly at the safe house. 2 guards. Outside her room, she knew it was over. Kroloff was gone. The child was no longer in her arms, and Julian had discovered too much, but deep inside her pocket, she had one final drive. She pulled it out. It was old, dusty, labeled E77 Auth for N only. Her voice trembled. "I told you I'd protect her, Nikolai, even from me." Julian and Clara on the road again. The black SUV tore through dark, winding mountain roads. Clara gripped the dashboard. "This is insane," she muttered. Julian kept his eyes on the road. "If we're right, we're not just protecting a child, we're stopping a second generation of weapons. Children turned into agents before they can even speak. Ella, she doesn't even know." "She might never," Julian said. "If they succeed, her mind becomes someone else." They reached a gated fence, overgrown with vines. A sign read, "U.S. Biosecurity Zone. No entry." Clara raised her brows. "Have you ever break into a black site before?" Julian gave a thin smile. "Twice." Inside the abandoned facility, the place was huge. Dust coated the floors. Broken lights flickered. The air smelled of chemicals and time. They moved carefully. Every corner felt like a trap. Clara found a control panel and rebooted power to the security logs. Screens buzzed to life. Julian stared. Footage showed doctors, soldiers, and children, but not just that. Clones. Clara gasped. They weren't just overwriting minds, they were building copies. Julian pointed at one image. It showed 2 babies side by side. Identical. Above one, E77 active. Above the other, E77 reserve. Julian whispered, "Twins." Sudden attack. A sound echoed. Boots. 3 armed men burst in, dressed in black, no insignias. They opened fire. Julian pulled Clara behind a metal desk, bullets tearing through walls. "These aren't just guards," he said. "They're cleaners." They fought back. Julian hit 2 with perfect shots. The third ran. They chased him down the corridor, but he vanished into a lift shaft. Julian cursed. "We're out of time." Clara pointed to one open lab room. Inside was a nursery. Empty cribs, monitoring equipment, blood samples, and a small file folder. Subject, E77. Mother, Delilah. Father, Nikolai R. Clara froze. "Julian, she's not the Dawsons' granddaughter. She's Delilah's daughter." Julian whispered, "And she never knew." Back in town, the real twist, Delilah stared at the photo Julian sent her. 2 babies. Her name on the document. Tears filled her eyes. "They took her from me," she whispered. "I thought she died during labor. They told me she didn't survive." She slammed her fist into the table. "Margaret lied to me, everyone did." Meanwhile, Clara, alone with Ella, Julian stayed behind to sweep the facility. Clara drove back with Ella. It was storming again. She kept glancing at the baby in the rearview mirror. "Who are you really?" she whispered. Suddenly, her GPS rerouted. New destination appeared. Transfer point arranged. ETA 14 minutes. She hadn't touched it. The car dashboard flashed red. Remote command activated. Clara tried to brake. The car didn't stop. She grabbed Ella and jumped out just in time before the SUV sped off without a driver. Julian gets a call. He was halfway down the mountain when his phone rang. Clara's voice was panicked. They hacked. The car tried to take me and Ella, Julian. Someone inside the agency gave them full access. Julian's face darkened. Get to the old train station, platform 2, no cameras, I'll meet you there. Final scene. The real enemy, Margaret, was being transported to a federal site. 2 guards sat beside her. Suddenly her phone buzzed in. Her coat hidden. She slipped it out and saw one text message. Failsafe code 811 active, remove E77, order final. She stared at it. No, she whispered. I won't kill her. But the guard beside her turned and wasn't a guard. It was Viktor Krolov. Alive. He smiled. You don't have a choice anymore. He raised his gun. Viktor Krolov's pistol glinted under the transport van's dim light. Margaret stared at him, heart pounding. You died in Berlin, she whispered. Krolov smiled. I died publicly, not privately. The guard beside them slumped, drugged. The driver, already dead. You're going to finish the mission, Krolov said, holding out a syringe. No more running, remove the girl. Margaret's hands trembled. She's just a baby. She's a weapon, he snapped. A silent one, a sleeper agent, implanted at birth. Do you want her growing up, not knowing who she really is? Who she was built to be? Margaret's jaw clenched. She's not a what, her name is Ella. She's E77, finish it. But Margaret made her choice. She slammed her elbow into his ribs and leapt from the moving van. The world spun. Pain exploded in her shoulder, but she ran into the woods. Behind her, the van stopped, and Krolov was coming. Julian and Clara, platform 2, abandoned train station rain, poured. Clara held Ella tight under her coat, the baby calm despite everything. Julian arrived moments later, gun drawn, scanning the area. Clara looked exhausted. She's sleeping. Good, Julian said. Let's hope she doesn't wake. Different, Clara turned to him. Do you think she's dangerous? Julian stared at the child. Not yet. Then he handed Clara a drive. What's this? A full confession, Julian said. Names, sites, timelines, Margaret, Krolov, Project Eve. If anything happens, to me, take it to the press. Clara touched his arm. You really think it's that bad? I think we've only scratched the surface. Margaret, bleeding, hiding. She stumbled through the trees, breath sharp in her lungs. Her mind swirled with guilt. 2 years ago, she'd been told Ella died during childbirth, but she found out it was a lie. That Delilah, her own daughter, had been told the baby was gone. Instead, the agency had taken Ella for something darker, and Margaret, desperate to protect the child, had smuggled her out. Lied to Delilah. Raised Ella herself, far from prying eyes. She pulled out the syringe Krolov gave her. She held it up against the rain. The label read, Memory Lock, Manual Trigger. She snapped it in two and tossed the pieces into the mud. She wasn't going to erase the baby. Not again. Final confrontation. The station is surrounded, black vans pulled up silently, unmarked. Dozens of agents stepped out. Julian and Clara were surrounded. No sudden moves, a voice called through a loudspeaker. Hand over the child. Julian raised his hands. She's not a threat. That's not your decision. Inside the circle of agents, Ella woke and began to cry. Suddenly, from the shadows, someone moved through the trees. Margaret, soaked and bloody, stumbled onto the platform. You're not taking her, she screamed. She stood between Ella and the agents. One agent raised his weapon. Julian aimed his gun at the agent. Standoff then. Boom. A single shot rang out. Everyone froze. One agent dropped. Behind him stood Delilah. Ella's mother. She was crying, holding a pistol. "You're not taking her from me again." The aftermath. 2 weeks later, in a secure hospital wing, Ella slept peacefully in Delilah's arms. Margaret, bandaged, sat nearby. Clara poured coffee. Julian stood by the window, silent. The press had exploded with the story. Black Project unveiled. Government using children for espionage. The babysitter who saved a life. And the name Ella was protected now. No files, no records, a new identity, new birth certificate, a clean slate. Julian stared at the baby. "You still think she's innocent?" Clara nodded. "Yes. And you?" He hesitated. "I think she gets to choose." Somewhere deep underground, in a different facility, a man walked through a steel corridor. He opened a cold chamber marked E-Series Reserve Clones. Inside floated a tank. A child. Identical. To Ella, its eyes opened and smiled. "If you liked the video, do like please, it motivate me."